So let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
As we spoke to the president, his Secretary of State was in Israel. His defense secretary was at a NATO meeting on Ukraine. America's oldest president seemed tired from directing all of this.
Yeah, that's a little of Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes covering for Joe Biden, in my view. Now we know more. CEO and owner, former owner of Paramount, CBS, Sherry Redstone, shed light on why she was so quick to settle with the Trump administration on the Harris interview. And it had a lot to do with Scott Pelley's interview with Joe Biden. Apparently, raw tapes would show Biden zombie-like. We'll explain.
Number 2.
They're looking at the security guarantees. What do they actually look like? Because if you bring in good security guarantees, this allows Zelenskyy some options as well in working with Putin so he can settle this conflict. And I think that we're on a path to do that.
We'll see. General Kellogg would know. Impressive Monday meeting at the White House has the world looking forward to a trilateral with Zelenskyy, Putin, and Trump. But Russia singing a different tune now that their cadre is back in Russia and left Alaska. We'll explain.
Number 1.
Unlike the Trump administration, Boston follows the law. And Boston will not back down from who we are and what we stand for.
And they stand for putting illegal immigrants first. This has to stop. Sanctuary cities in the eye of this Trump storm, with the focus on the biggest abuser, and that arguably is Boston. We discuss all elements of border security, even a new color for the big, beautiful wall. And joining us now is Will Cain, fresh off a successful SEAL swim in the Hudson. And he looked great while doing an interview. Don't know how you got your IFB in, but Will Cain, I cannot wait for the Will Cain Show today, which will be your podcast, as well as Will Cain Country, which is your TV show, right?
You got it reversed. Yeah. The podcast digital show is Will Cain Country. The television show is the Will Cain Show. It's all very confusing.
When did you separate them?
More Will Cain. It's like a month or two ago. They said, hey, they both have the same name. They were both named the Will Cain Show. We find that confusing for the consumer. I said, I think that you're right. And then, of course, we put together a massive focus group internally and batted about 10 names, and we landed on Will Cain Country.
And right. And I like your promo. How long did you shoot that?
The other day, was it last night? I was sitting there watching television, Brian, and I was watching the brand new Jerry Jones Dallas Cowboys docu-series on Netflix, which is really incredible and basically an homage to Jerry's ego. And my phone rings, and it says, Stephen A. Smith. And I go, what is this? He doesn't call all that often. And I answered it, and all I heard was just laughing and going on and carrying it about that he had just seen the promo. One man, two hats. He said, and then you put your feet up on the desk with your cowboy boots. Oh, man, it's the best.
So he was mocking you, but yet a little bit of jealousy, perhaps, because there's only one Stephen A. Smith.
I think that's the exact right recipe, Ryan. Mocking me with a little bit of jealousy.
Right. And you guys, of course, had years on ESPN together, and you had him on one of your first guests. So, Will, before we get into what's going on in the world, you're going to be talking about that on both your shows, with both your hats. Saturday night, coming up at 7:30 local time, that's 8:30 Eastern time, on Fox Nation, you're going to be streaming History, Liberty, and Laughs. You on stage. Now, most of your stuff is unscripted, your interviews and things, just your intros are written. But I'm bringing you to something you really haven't done before. Am I correct?
Yeah, as far as I understand it, you and I spoke on the phone yesterday. I'm going to be in a little bit of a Saturday Night Live environment. I'm going to be placed into scripted situations, but I will be unscripted. And it's going to be a first for me. I get to riff about whatever the scene and moment that we are creating entails, and that's pretty dangerous on your part.
Right, we're going back in history because we're going to teach America to love our country's history again. Is it possible, Will?
Absolutely. I think we're in a renaissance of patriotism and love of America. I think there's always going to be dark corners, but you just spend the weekend like you just suggested I did, Brian, where, I'm surrounded by 300 patriots swimming across the rivers of the Hudson, doing pull-ups and push-ups, American flags, bagpipes, and New York Fire Department vehicles blaring their horns through downtown Manhattan. And yeah, you'll be reminded, this country is not just great, but it's loved.
Right. And it's we're coming up on year 250, so it's going to be pretty cool. So how do you feel about in Oklahoma, before they hire teachers, they got some basic questions on America First test. I'm sure you went over this yesterday. What are the and just they're basic things. It's not opinion. It's not like, why is America great? These are things like, what are the first 3 words of the Constitution? Why is freedom of religion important in American identity? What are the 2 parts of the U.S. Congress? And people are up in arms. I watched CNN last night to torture myself, and they were crazed that Oklahoma is making teachers go through it, saying you need teachers. You shouldn't worry about indoctrinating them. What am I missing?
You're missing nothing. We should indoctrinate them into a love of America. We should indoctrinate them into an understanding of America. That's what I require. Not love, but an understanding. Most of the people that hate America, either from the student side or from the teacher, they don't understand America. I saw these questions, Brian. I thought they were really fun. I thought maybe we should put them to the audience, see if I could pass. It's a really interesting experiment. You've seen Jesse Waters and Johnny on the Street. You see how few people can actually answer questions about American history. Don't you think it's basic minimum civics that a teacher should be able to answer? That the answer to the question is, we the people.
Well, I think it's all linked. I think it's linked to the socialists being elected by this new generation of Americans who are popping up in Minneapolis, who are popping up in New York City and popping up in Seattle. Now we got running in Maine. Why are young people going for socialism? Because they don't fundamentally understand what the Cold War was. They don't fundamentally understand what we're living in, capitalism, and what it brings, as opposed to, America is not fair and it's not good. It's the haves and have-nots. They don't have the fundamental concept. If we get more quizzes like this and teachers start teaching the right thing, wouldn't have to worry about our future like some in New York City are legitimately worried about.
Well, they're, through their life experience and through their education, pretty far removed from the practical applications of these experiments. They haven't lived or learned about the experiments in socialism across Western Europe or the experiments in communism across Eastern Europe. They haven't understood and lived the unique historical place of the American experiment. And so if you don't understand it, either through experience or education, then you're going to take it for granted or you're going to hate it. But I do believe, Brian, no matter what's happening in New York City, I'm pretty confident we're talking about an increasingly or a decreasing fraction of America. I think if you look at the things that are said and then represented by the Democrat Party, they are making themselves a permanent minority. I do not see a future for the path that they're headed down. I don't know what the rival will be to the Republican Party. I don't know what, there will always be 2 parties. There will always be 2 visions, but I'm increasingly confident it won't be the one presented by Democrats.
I hope so, because if Joe Manchin's running for president or Harold Ford's running for president, I am a lot less worried who the Democrat or Republican president is going to be, because they fundamentally, it's just center left, as opposed to way left. Will, who's coming up on the podcast today?
Brian always asks me this, and I never know because I only know what's coming in front of my nose. Here's what I'm doing when I hang up the phone with you, Brian. So this is what will be on the television show.
Yeah.
Is the Pete and Bobby Challenge. I'm headed to the gym with Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 5 minutes. I'm headed there right now. You
know that RFK and Pete couldn't do it.
I know. The question is, can I?
Right. I tell you, the build looks pretty strong after I watched you on Sunday. We'll have more of you on Saturday night, and I have full faith in you, Will Cain. He's got the podcast and the television show and a fitness challenge. Not much on his agenda. Will Cain, thanks so much.
Take care, Brian. See you Saturday.
He literally is heading to the gym right now. So he was called out by Pete and by RFK, so they got to tag somebody. They also tagged Sean Duffy. So Sean Duffy, another guy, former lumberjack, great athlete. But as Sean Duffy said, I got 2 jobs. I'm running NASA and I'm running transportation. And now you want me to go do 50 pull-ups or push-ups as well as push-ups in a certain amount of time. But I think it's supposed to be 10 minutes, not 5 minutes. I think 5 minutes is almost impossible unless you're this elite, Navy SEAL or something. This has got to stop. Sanctuary cities in the eye of the Trump storm, with the focus now on the biggest abuser, and that's Boston. We'll discuss all elements of border security, including a new color for the big, beautiful wall. Mollie, welcome back. As you know, Mollie's Fox News contributor, fresh off her appearance on Gutfeld, where she did not defend me, even though my character was brought into question. She's also editor-in-chief of the Federalist. Mollie, welcome back.
It's great to be here with you, Brian.
I know, but you didn't have time to defend me because he was just going after me, and then he asked somebody else a question. But I hope you don't. Mollie, first off, the decision to paint the wall black. I like it. It's going to be hard. I just worry about Border Patrol touching it. I don't worry about people trying to sneak in and touching it.
Right. I don't know. I don't actually care about the color. I care about the height, the width. Yes, but the color. I mean, it could be baby blue for all I care.
Don't you think it's almost hysterical that he's that into detail, that he's talking about the new party room at the White House, the new color of the wall. Oh yeah, and Ukraine-Russia peace.
I just remember in 2016, Charlie Hurt would always remind people, Trump is a builder. That's what he likes. He likes to build things. He likes to decorate them. He does care about this type of attention to detail. We're getting much more of this in the second term, I think.
I think so too. First off, on the drama of Alaska, leading up to the drama on Monday, I saw that comparison online when you have President Trump with his arms folded famously and Merkel leaning on the desk, and everyone seems to be mad at him as he sits there by himself. And then you see now where he's behind the Resolute desk and all seven are around that. Doesn't that tell the story?
Oh, you think about this. Like, there aren't that many world leaders right now who are the same as they were during his first term.
Macron.
Many things have changed. There has been a global populist resurgence that has affected other countries as well. But yeah, it was a much different environment than that hostility that you saw in the first term.
So we have really shuttle diplomacy. Henry Kissinger, the 1970s, trying to do it. He would just fly from capital to capital saying, okay, I'm going to go there. Not waiting. They don't have the technology then we have now, obviously. You could Zoom it now. But now I like
you got to do it in person, even just for security reasons, to see how people are reacting. You can't quite get that on a Zoom. Talks are not the end of the deal, but they are a necessary step if you want to have good global affairs. And so it is really great that you've seen so many talks recently. There's a long way to go to get a resolution to this Ukraine-Russia war, but this is someone said it actually this week. This is the best progress we've had since the war began.
So Emmanuel Macron, one of the only leaders still there from the first term with President Trump, said this, cut 14.
When I look at the situation and the facts, I don't see President Putin really willing to get peace now. But perhaps I'm too pessimistic. But so I think it's very important to launch this process. I think it's very important we build these security guarantees. This is a game changer for Ukraine and for the European security. And I think we have to launch the process of this bilateral meeting, this trilateral meeting, and this multilateral meeting.
So here's what bothers me. Lavrov, the foreign minister who doesn't seem to ever die, says, we implicitly reject suggestions that Russia might accept Western security guarantees, followed up by his spokesperson, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Maria Zakharova, says the Russians categorically reject any scenario that envisions the appearance in Ukraine of a military contingent with the participation of NATO countries. So I think we got a bridge.
Everyone's going to have to, and if you're going to have a negotiated settlement, each side is going to have to give up something. And so when they head into negotiations, each side is going to probably give an indication that there's nothing that they'll agree to, but that they will ultimately agree to. And so I think that for a lot of the people in the West, they do want to see Ukraine become more officially a Western country. I mean, the big problem for Ukraine, going back to the end of the Cold War, when the Cold War ended, you had George H.W. Bush's top security people just doing an excellent job of helping kind of settle that situation without it leading to nuclear conflict. The one country they were worried about was Ukraine. They were worried about it because it is this, it's, sort of Western, sort of Eastern. It has these problems. And they recommended that it be steadfastly neutral in any sort of conflict between the West and Russia. That's not how it turned out. And we do have a very bad situation there now. But if they could join economically the West.
EU.
Yeah. And then also you've had European countries saying for years that they want to defend Ukraine militarily, and we've obviously been involved in that as well. So how the devil is completely in the details of what it means to have security interests protected by Europe and the United States. And that's what this next step of negotiations will all be about. Russia has a very strong interest in having access to the ports that go through Ukraine. I mean, that's unfortunately how this whole thing started.
Well, they just took Crimea, but they'll never get Odessa.
Well, the question for Ukraine is, if they want to have a country, unfortunately, there probably will be some land that Russia has taken that Russia will get to keep. But if that means that the country is strong and secure for the future, that's going to be in their interest as well.
And we'll see. So I want to move over to CBS. I don't know if you had a chance to see that story. You had a chance to look at it?
No, that was fascinating. The clip you were just playing.
So Sherry Redstone has been informing the New York Times about the process leading up to the sale of Paramount. Her dad owned it, evidently treated her like crap her entire life. But when he passes away and they win the suit with all the gold diggers that were trying to grab money from him, she emerges. And she sets up her Paramount, and they're going to run it for a few years. But her turning point was she is pro-Israel. And when she saw the way the coverage was anti-Israel at CBS, she tried to balance it out. She put Susan Zirinsky in that spot to push back on this other guy, Duffy, who's been running 60 Minutes. He says, I think we should focus on Israel. They were attacked October 7th. She couldn't get their attention. Well, this guy, Duffy, leaves. He resigns. Scott Pelley thinks he's a martyr. He's going to say that's because of Sherry Redstone, but she just wants to sell it to Skydance. Now, Trump comes in and says, you edited that Harris interview unfairly. And she said, we're suing. He goes, okay, fix it. Admit it. They say, no, we're not going to do that. Can we see the transcripts? We're not going to do that. So they sue. She immediately says, we don't want any part of this. I got to sell this thing. I want to settle it. She sees ABC settle. She goes, that's about the right amount. Let's settle for that. And one of the reasons she wants to settle for that is because she knows there's a Joe Biden interview out there, at which Scott Pelley sits down with Joe Biden, and evidently he's in a coma, basically nodding off. And even the finished product looked terrible, but Scott Pelley never said a word after that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I've actually been doing some reporting on that Biden interview. It takes place the same week as October 7th when Hamas goes to war against Israel. And first off, it's such a gauzy, nice profile that they do of President Biden. They begin by saying, oh, it had been a difficult week for him, so he was kind of tired and whatnot. The type of gentle coverage that you would never give a Republican or Donald Trump. But I've spoken with people who worked there who said it was their biggest monster edit they had ever had to do to make President Biden look publicly acceptable.
So you knew about this. You've been finding out about this on a parallel story.
I've been researching and reporting on this. And so it wasn't just that they did this very nice and friendly thing with Kamala Harris, but they did this monster edit on Joe Biden. And then, of course, you also remember they had nothing but hostile, like cartoonishly hostile interviews of Donald Trump during that time as well.
So I want you to hear Scott Pelley. So they they decide to pay off the Trump administration. They're going to give some of it to the library. And the message has been sent. And one of the things she said is, in some odd way, Donald Trump could help balance out my news department. That was one of her quotes from the story, if I'm quickly paraphrasing. But remember, Scott Pelley goes to Wake Forest as the commencement speaker and just starts ripping, I guess, Trump and where we're at in journalism today. Cut 30.
Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives. They can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
I should correct myself. Susan Zirinsky came to run this with Bill Owens. Bill Owens resigned when she realized Zirinsky was there, not necessarily because of the Trump suit. But that sanctimonious tone says so much, knowing what we know.
Well, he's right in a way, right? He's talking about how powerful people work for evil. And that's what our corporate media have done for decades now. You take, for example, how CBS hid from the American people the true state of the president's decline. This isn't a victimless crime. Our media had access, people like CBS had access to Biden. They knew he was in decline. They knew he was in charge of global affairs. I mean, this is the type of decline that could lead to massive loss of life, horrific economic consequences. And by the way, it did. And they were hiding it maliciously and willfully. And they do that on every issue. It's not just President Biden versus President Trump. It's how they cover issues like radical gender ideology, immigration, right to keep and bear arms, like whatever the issue is, they're always, foot on the gas pedal, helping out the left with their narratives instead of reporting the truth.
So do you think Scott Pelley really thinks he's being fair and balanced when it comes to Trump? Do you think Leslie Stahl thinks, now, don't you think that at one point she went out to dinner and they said, Leslie, pass the salt, that laptop was real. That showed that Joe Biden was working to undermine activities, unsavory activities in Ukraine. It does show the interaction of these business practices is what is on this laptop. Do you think at any point it gets into their newsroom?
You have to imagine that if you have any sense of self, you would feel guilt for that. Leslie Stahl, to the President of the United States, said, we can't report on the fact of Hunter Biden's laptop and the contents therein because it's not real. It's real. She has to know. No matter what kind of news bubble she's in now, she has to know it's real. I mean, there's no question. There's no debate about it. And so to sit there and tell the President of the United States, like to mock him and attack him and say, we can't report facts because we're going to pretend those facts aren't real, you have to feel bad about it. And it's not just the laptop. It's also they were big drivers of the Russia collusion hoax. That's where very bad actors in the intelligence community told the media what to say. And they said, sir, yes, sir. I will do whatever you ask, Mr. CIA director. That's not journalism. That's evil, too, because the public is counting on you to report the facts. And again, that's something with globally horrific consequences. To lie about a country stealing an election from you, that's not, again, not a victimless crime. It's really bad behavior.
All right. Lastly, I'm really pushing my luck, but Tulsi Gabbard came out yesterday and said 37 people lose their security clearances. We're finding out more and more information. You and I get it. You know probably more as much as anybody with what went on leading up to the 2016 election, but more importantly, after Hillary lost. Do you think this is going to bleed it all into the mainstream? And if not, and I don't know how important it is, but if not, what will it take to get it there?
Well, one of the narratives of that Russia collusion hoax was that Donald Trump was an agent of Russia. They had conspired to steal the election, and that he was fighting these valiant people in the intelligence community. Now we know the opposite is true, that the intelligence community was making up this lie about Russia and Trump. And what I have actually reported just in the last couple months is that there were good people in the intelligence community who were screaming from the rooftops, you can't make up this lie about Trump and Russia colluding, or you can't use this dossier in an intelligence product. They had their jobs threatened. They were told that they didn't know everything that was going on. So the actual good people in the intelligence community are now finally being heard. The bad people, there are some consequences like losing your security clearance.
Well, what about Mike Rogers, who is at the hot top saying, hey, listen, we're working way too fast. We don't see what you're seeing. And Clapper's like, I know we're working fast. Tough. Do it anyway. I can't come to the conclusions you're coming to. So there's so many moving parts, and Trump's pushing the envelope. His team is pushing the envelope everywhere.
Well, you want to have good intelligence agencies. And in order to do that, you have to root out the corruption and make sure that people can at least somewhat trust them again.
I don't think they should be working against Democrats or Republicans. We should never accept it. Mollie, thanks so much. Andy McCarthy, Fox News contributor, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, best-selling author. Welcome back, Andy.
Happy summer, Brian.
Happy summer. I know. It's coming to an end. Soon we'll get back to school shopping. Andy, first off, I got to ask you, I remember in 2017, one of the first things Donald Trump did is take on these sanctuary cities. And he got stuck in the courts. It didn't go his way. There were other things he did work on in terms of border security, and now he sealed the border and he's going for it. I understand that Todd Blanche has got 9 separate lawsuits. Is there an approach to this city issue that the federal government can win on? Is there a tactic that they're now employing?
Yeah, I think bottom line legally, they can win a lot on the sanctuary city stuff. As we've talked about before, Brian, the line here is the feds can't commandeer the state police forces and governments to help them enforce the immigration laws, except to the extent that Congress has enacted laws that require states to do certain things. So you can't commandeer them. But if they obstruct the federal enforcement of immigration law, then they're in the wrong, and the administration should be able to win in court. I worry a little bit about things that the administration has done that I didn't think it had to do, that is going to have a bad effect, I think, on how the courts approach these cases. Like, I think to the extent that they went after these legal aliens, like this kid at, he's not a kid, the one at Columbia, Khalif, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but you know who I'm talking about. The
Khalil, Mahmoud Khalil.
Yeah, right. I think they should have taken the position in those cases that they were in the right legally, that Rubio has the power to do this, and therefore they would litigate it in the Southern District of New York or in Boston or any place else. Instead, they kind of whisk these guys away. They bring them down to, courts in the South that they think are more favorable to the administration. I don't think the judges are going to like that, a lot of the judges who are going to hear these cases. So they may lose some cases in the opening rounds, and that's going to delay their ability to enforce the laws. But they have a strong position to the extent that these states have been obstructing the administration's ability to enforce the law.
I want you to hear Todd Blanche, cut 8.
We filed lawsuits in 9 states already, and you can expect more of those to come. There's potentially criminal investigations coming, because in lots of situations, these cities are not just enacting sanctuary laws where they protect any information from coming to the federal government about illegal criminals that are here, but they're actually obstructing our efforts to do so.
So they're taking action. So Michelle Wu is using this as put her stake in the ground. But I can run over this police blotter over the last few months of how many illegal aliens have committed these horrific crimes, and it doesn't seem like that seems to get through the bubble that these mayors are in.
Well, if you're going to just look at it in terms of that, let's face it, in blue cities, blue cities are not reflective of the attitudes of Americans across the country. These sanctuary policies didn't sort of, spontaneously appear. They were enacted by people who are elected by the populations in these cities. So obviously, not everybody sees this the same way. And I think if you look at it, globally or nationally, the administration's policies are working. Now, you can't expect to bat your eyes and have everything be perfect. But if you look down at the border, it's near miraculous the way that they've changed the influx of illegal immigrants into the country, not just at the border in Mexico, but portals across the country. So slowly but surely, this is turned around, and it's to the administration's great credit. That doesn't mean that they're going to get slam dunk wins in these blue states. They're going to have to go through judges who have been appointed by, if you think about it, Brian, Obama, and if there were 800 or so federal district judges in the country, Obama and Biden collectively probably appointed about 3/4 of them, at least 2/3 of them. And most of those appointments are going to be in states that have 2 Democratic senators who influence the process of picking judges. So the administration's going to run into some very unfriendly courts in the opening rounds. What they have to hope is, as they go up the chain in the federal system, they'll do better.
Andy, the president of the United States brought up that he wants to get rid of paper ballots. He says he's back on that. He's talked to Vladimir Putin about it, and he would know because he used paper ballots and he cheats on every election. But here is Adrian Fontes, the Arizona Secretary of State, on President Trump's quest to get rid of paper ballots once and for all.
The only problem with the security and legitimacy of mail-in ballots is that the president keeps lying about it. I don't know where the president is getting his advice from. It's clearly not from an understanding of the Constitution. But the clear message needs to be this. I don't work for you, Donald Trump. I work for the people of the state of Arizona. And I don't take my guidance from you. I take it from the Constitution and from the rules established in state law.
I should say mail-in ballots. So he's not going to change. Obviously, Oregon does all mail-in ballots. That's an example. So to get the president get momentum to get rid of mail-in ballots?
Well, he's got to do it by congressional statute. You know, the president, the Constitution gives the authority over elections to the states, but it gives Congress a supervisory check when it comes to federal elections. There's nothing the federal government can do about state elections. The states can have, except to the extent the Constitution has some very minimal standards, the states can do pretty much what they want with their own elections. But with respect to federal elections, the states make the law preliminarily, but Congress has the ability to regulate the way the federal elections are conducted. Supreme Court's held that a number of times. The president has nothing to do with how elections are regulated. It's got to be done by statute. In fact, you know, presidents are quite intentionally kept out of the election business because the framers didn't want the president influencing that. So it's a collaboration between the states and Congress. If the president wants to get rid of mail-in ballots, I happen to agree with him policy-wise. I think it would be much better for the country, not just in terms of fraud, Brian. I think it would be better for the country if we all voted on the same day so that we had the same information when we went to the polls. You know, why we should find out, like you start early voting 6 weeks before Election Day, and then a week before Election Day, some cataclysmic event happens that might have changed your vote. We should all vote on the same information at the same time, and the most secure way of doing it is in person at the ballot. But Congress has to enact that, and obviously it's very tough with this Congress to get something like that.
Two-thirds you need, right? Two-thirds of the Senate?
Well, you don't need a constitutional amendment. They can do this by statute, but you'd need to beat the filibuster rules in the Senate. You know, I guess you'd have to get 60 to get it to the floor.
All right. So that's the president's going to bring that forward, see if he can get momentum behind it, but it might be hard, even though it would be just. And he brought up this study that Jimmy Carter co-authored that said mail-in ballots are a recipe for corruption because he was doing that around the world for a long time. The other thing we're looking at as Texas is getting set to vote on redistricting in that state, Gavin Newsom says, I'm ready to fight you. Listen.
We need to disabuse ourselves of the way things have been done. It's not good enough to just hold hands, have a candlelight vigil, and talk about the way the world should be. We have got to recognize the cards that have been dealt, and we have got to meet fire with fire.
He is an expert on fire, so I'll give him that. And he does know how to get it going, just not put it out. So your reaction to what California's got to do, they got to go get a referendum to put on hold their law that had them going with an independent counsel to district, correct?
Yeah, I don't think, Brian, this is one of those many issues that we have, and we're going to get a lot more as we get closer to the next election cycles, where you get a divide between law and politics. So it seems to me that what Newsom wants to do is, legally speaking, it contravenes California law. It's also a loser for Democrats nationally because the Democrats have played the jerry-rigging game about as much as you can. So they've squeezed out about everything they can squeeze out, whereas there's a lot of room for Republicans to run in a number of states. So if they want to throw down and do this redistricting thing, overall, they're going to lose. I think that, the Wall Street Journal, if I'm remembering right, a couple of days ago said maybe 10, 15 seats the Republicans would, if we really do this nationally, the Republicans are going to win by a wide margin. But the immediate interest that Newsom has is he wants to run for president. And people who want to run for president in the Democratic Party are pulled way to the left. We've seen this in a number of cycles. It helps Newsom politically to take on the mantle of being the guy who's combating Trump over districting and is taking a leadership role in these issues. That doesn't mean it's nationally a smart political move or that it's a wise legal move, but I think it helps him in progressive democratic politics.
Andy McCarthy, our guest. Andy, I got to ask you, too, the other thing I'd love to see happen is not count illegal immigrants as part of the census. What are the chances of us that happening?
Again, I think that would have to be done by statute. And it's very hard to move things. Look, the sad reality in this country is we have one party that wants to regulate, I think in a sensible way, immigration in the United States. And we have another party whose position is that we shouldn't have borders. And like most issues that we have in the United States, both sides have some conception of the national interest at stake, and you can find some room for compromise. I just don't see how there's compromise on an issue when one side doesn't think the United States should even have borders.
I know you're trying to be a little pragmatic in saying that, but you're 100% right. Lastly, this is a little opinion, a little legal. What you see happen in D.C. right now? The thought in the beginning was Donald Trump's doing it to distract. I heard people say from the Epstein files, which, by the way, we're not even talking about. No one's talking about it. They're doing an investigation. That's on a separate track. But then they said, well, he's not going into the bad areas. Well, that's not true. So now you have a situation where the National Guard is there. Then you have the FBI who bulked up numbers there, about 120, 130 patrolling. Now you have other National Guardsmen out. And now the cops, who are about 1,000 cops short, are fanned out to the government projects and things like that in these trouble areas. And the results are pretty astoundingly good. Right. What do you think we learned from this?
Well, I think hopefully we learn what we had already reason to know, which is that the drive to record low crime in the United States that began in around 1991 and continued beyond around 2015. So you had a generation of record low crime. We know what caused that. It wasn't like a miracle from the sky. Yeah. It was a particular kind of intelligence-based, very present policing, which included like broken window strategy and that kind of stuff. There's no mystery to this. We know what works. And what we've done in the last decade is go back to the same progressive policies that really have their birth in the 60s and 70s.
So hopefully this is the beginning of waking up out of that. Andy, I know you're a law and order guy. Andy McCarthy, thanks so much. Check out his column about Trump and the mail-in ballots. Bad news for Trump, but we agree with the sentiment. Andy McCarthy, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
I would say this. Tyrus, would you even be nervous, as Tyrus has entered the building, would you even be nervous if you were a reporter sitting in the press room knowing that Caroline Leavitt was going to challenge the premise of your question?
Only if my agenda was to push a narrative.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I refer to them, they're not media, they're squealers. From the book Animal Farm. They just push narratives. They don't facts. And how about asking a question? Here's a crazy one. How'd it go?
Yeah.
How is the president feeling after his conversation with Vladimir Putin? They never ask the real questions. It's a setup. Trying to, and I think it's funny they're always going after lately whether the President Trump is tired or seems off. Where were you 4 years ago?
Limping, yeah.
Yeah, limping. And, well, you know what? When you don't rest and you're doing generational work trying to clean up this country from 4 years of just disaster, you're going to be tired. You might have a limp.
Did you hear what Senator Lindsey Graham said? While flying back from Alaska on the 6th hour, right? A 2.5-hour meeting.
Yep.
Half-hour press conference, 6 hours one way, 6 hours the other. He calls up Lindsey Graham and said, do you want to play golf tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
So the guy, he's 79 years old. I want to play golf tomorrow morning. Got to get up at 8 o'clock. He's not going to be hungover. He doesn't drink.
No, he's going to sleep. And I'm assuming there's a comfortable bed of some sort in Air Force One. Probably one of the most beautiful beds ever made, a lot of people say.
Right,
but,
some are saying.
Yes.
That's what they're telling me.
But again, this is the problem with the media. They shouldn't even have them in the room because they already have their questions and answers before they even go in the room.
But you know what? He's balancing out the press room now. They are balancing it out more. So you do get some questions like you've already brought stopped 5 wars in 5 separate nations, and then let him answer. And then, it's just kind of frustrating, I think. And I think that Caroline Leavitt is taking a page from Kayleigh. Kayleigh was the first I saw open up that book and say, here's the questions you should have asked.
Exactly.
This is what you're not doing. And I thought to myself, this is precedent setting. Caroline Leavitt picked up the mantle.
Well, Sarah Huckabee did the same thing. She started challenging the media. Like, why are you here? What was the point? You could have done all this without even asking the question.
She had the worst.
Yeah.
She had the whole Russia thing.
Yeah, and again, ask the question that people want to know. But again, that means you have to actually research. You have to pay attention. You can't get your questions off X.
So I was out yesterday. Thanks for filling in. You do an unbelievable job.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity every time I get it.
So I don't know if you had a chance, I don't think, to talk about the CBS story. I just jumped on it late last night, flying back. And it turns out that if you look at Sherry Redstone, she wants to sell Paramount CBS, and she's en route to doing it to Skydance. And then all of a sudden, this Harris interview comes out, and the president says, I'm suing you. You made her look coherent.
Right.
I'm suing you. And he wins, and they said the suit's going right. No, you sue. I want $15-16 million. So she was talking to the New York Times the whole time. She goes, just don't publish it until we settle. And they said, a deal. So what she said is, I want to settle. And she goes, I want to settle. And you know one of the reasons why? It's about 5 pages, so it's New York Times story, so it goes on forever. But one of the reasons why, she said, because in Discovery, they're worried about going back to the 2023 Biden interview. When Scott Pelley sat there, and according to reports, he was dozing off during the interview. Did Mr. Journalist say anything about that?
No.
She goes, it's going to get worse. We're going to get charged more if they start going after us. Cut a deal.
But that's the hold off on the story until after what journalism worth their merit would agree to that? They're not journalists. You tell the truth as it comes. Could you imagine if I did something stupid and I said, hey, do me a favor. Don't bring this up till after my negotiations with Fox, please. I don't want any distractions. The journalists would be like, absolutely not. The people need to know. This is the problem, and this is why the media is dead.
About the story itself, what do you think?
Yeah.
How do you think the fact that she's trying to be the mature person in the room and the journalists at CBS say, how dare you?
Yeah, no, because of course they have to say, how dare you? And then her rebuttal should be, no, how dare you? Because they're just not doing their craft. I mean, you went to school. You had to have some honor, some integrity. You want to be the best in your field.
Yeah.
And you have to ask, who benefits from this type of reporting? I'll be narrativing. Who benefits?
But can you imagine if they really don't understand that they're being biased? And with Sherry Redstone, who evidently, I did not know all this background, but her dad evidently treated her terribly. And then she had two gold-digging wives.
Great. We
just
all
to bring
have
it back
scars
to
and bumps. And they don't know. They do know. That's what makes it.
Yeah, they had two gold-digging young wives that didn't work out. So she ends up getting the company.
Issues. Yeah, I'm saying I was born with 2 left feet, and I wanted to square dance. I get it,
right.
But it has nothing to do with doing your job. Do your job.
Yeah. So she was saying that she takes over, and she's like, you know what? The more I think of it, I think I just want to cash out. So in the meantime, Israel gets hit October 7th, and she's big pro-Israel. And she's seeing the way CBS is covering Israel, pro-Hamas, the way we've all been witnessing.
Right.
And she sees there's no balance. She asks for some balance. So she hires someone from the outside to come in and provide balance at 60 Minutes. She is recognizing the problem. So that guy quits because how dare you bring in somebody to oversee me? And then this whole thing blows up with Kamala Harris. One of her quotes was, to paraphrase, maybe Donald Trump can bring balance to the CBS newsroom.
Yeah, life is turning into Star Wars. We need balance in the Force. We need balance in the thing. No, there needs to be mass firings. There needs to be. There are journalists out there that want to do their job. There are people that want to run a fair and balanced company. Because here's the thing: if you are fair and balanced, you will always be in the conversation.
And you get advertisers.
Yes. When you pick a side, short term, they can't see past their nose. If you pick a side, like I'm going all in on the left and Biden and Kamala, and if they win, you can carry that on for another 4 years, but then they lost, and they lost horribly. And the Wizard of Oz, they pulled the curtain and they saw all the stuff that was going on. Now you have nothing.
Right.
And that's what they have. And instead of accepting the fact that they picked the wrong side willingly, they're still trying to put Band-Aids on it. And if we could just get one thing on the president, it will all be worth it.
So here is Scott Pelley, October 2023. This is the same day he did the interview with Robert Hur, which, by the way, is the same day of the attack, this October 7th, on Israel. So cut 28.
As we spoke to the president, his Secretary of State was in Israel. His defense secretary was at a NATO meeting on Ukraine. America's oldest president seemed tired from directing all of this.
Directing. Number one, directing all of this? Are you kidding me?
Stop it. He didn't direct.
Covering for, right? Covering for.
You know what bothers me is that voice used to mean something. That voiceover, 60-minute voiceover, was powerful. It was truth. Now, when you hear it, you roll your eyes. You just go, they have completely destroyed their credibility. And as a journalist and as a TV show that pushes news, credibility is the only thing you have. It's not entertainment. He's not dazzling us with colorful epitaphs.
Just your opinion. Do you believe that he knows that he's not being balanced?
Yeah, 1,000%. This is not a dumb man. These are not dumb people. They went to the greatest schools and they had all the greatest things. They're martyrs. They know better than the American people. That's the Trump derangement syndrome, is that I'm smarter, I'm better. And it's a little bit of narcissism in there to where, maybe they're just jealous because their voices didn't have the same effect. You understand that President Trump took the expert out of the experts. There used to be, who was the number one guy on foreign policy? Was it Kerry? Was the guy, even Biden himself was considered, he's a foreign policy expert. And then this guy from Queens shows up and says, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And he's talking to everybody. I believe they said he talks at a 6th grade level, which means that everyone understands him, from somebody who's uneducated to a scientist. And he basically took all of their steam and their prestige out the window because it was all fluff. So he knows 1,000%. It's a revenge tour.
So listen to Scott Pelley at Wake Forest in May after they settled for $16 million. And he says the Harris interview is the way we do things, that the president had without merit to do this. He won anyway. Cut 30.
Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives. They can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
You look like I was going to cry.
Yeah, because it's projection.
By the way, those kids were graduating?
Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, Mom.
Yeah,
Hi,
they were real excited to hear that. Yeah. Again, this is what, and you can break this down in simple terms. A bad husband who's committed to his lie. He's committed to he wasn't cheating or whatever it was he was to destroy his marriage. He will continue. See, the beautiful thing about lies is they stick to everything. You can connect anything. Diversity isn't a bad thing.
It's how it's used.
Unqualified diversity is a bad thing. Yeah. Abused diversity is a bad thing. DEI was a bad thing because it doesn't matter what color the box is that you put in the store. It's whether the product delivers to the consumer. Bottom line.
And that's where the president got back to meritocracy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, listen, inclusion is great except for the excluded people.
Yeah, we have inclusion in this country. It's called opportunity.
Yeah, that's it.
Best and bright is simple.
Right, and compared to something else. President's moving in on education. He's moving in on law and order. He's moving in on world peace. He's trying to bolster up our security, get our energy sector going, and he's doing it all at once, and we're only 7 months in. More with Tyrus in just a moment.
I do think we should all commend Brett Baer on how well he handled this interaction.
Do you know who I am? Said Brett Baer. I'm Brian Kilmeade. And I hate the cops. I'm Brian. Tell them back I'm Brian Kilmeade and I hate the cops. And then speed off.
Let me just, before you say anything, I always say he's a friend.
Right.
I never partake in any of the besmirchment of your good name. But I will say you were one of the best sports at Gutfeld's clear envy of your success, your prowess. You know, when you started the semi-pro soccer team, I'm sure he was in his office angry because he doesn't have a soccer team.
Right.
You know, you're one of the most
respected
respected
on Fallon
guys.
when he could be at a soccer game.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, since you didn't roll tapes because apparently he wanted to talk about the Tonight Show quite a bit. Like,
did you hear that?
4 or 5 days.
You missed
after.
a few days.
Yeah, on purpose. But when he mentioned, he goes, "Hey," and I said, "I wasn't aware you were on." Wait, wasn't Kilmeade on? So I protect.
You do.
I protect and serve. Listen, I'm a part of your books. Look, Greg's just envious. You know, you're a good 3 or 4 inches taller than him. Your workouts are legendary. I mean, you keep a soccer ball in your radio because you work out.
Do you think that Gutfeld's doing that?
No, he's not. He's envious, and it's sad. You know, it's sad, and let's be honest. The audience, the audience kind of laughs. You don't get the same laugh when you make fun of Jesse Waters, huge laugh. But you're a respected guy, you know. And I think a lot of times the crowd's just excited to hear your name.
So Tyrus, do you think respected enough to pack the house on the 23rd in Dallas
1,000%.
at the Winspear Theater?
They're sold out. Rafters, people standing in line.
Really?
Outside, probably some scalping and whatnot going on. Yes.
I would love to know people scalp my tickets.
Yeah, 1,000%. You know, it was interesting yesterday when, again, thank you for letting me fill in. Alan West was on. And
he's coming.
Yeah, and he's phenomenal. He's one of my favorite people. And we got into a great conversation about Booker T. And I got a chance to say, hey, there's this great book. And I still think it's one of the best books written about that period, that time, that individual, that relationship.
But why is he not respecting the black community? I was in New Orleans yesterday, and I saw it was great. Booker T. Washington High School. Right? I'm like, why don't we hear more about this?
Well, it's the same thing was why is every Martin Luther King Boulevard one of the worst streets in the community? I think, and I can't speak, there was like a black community. We're a very independent, individual culture. And unfortunately, a lot of our heroes are lost upon us because, and I'm just being real, when we focus on entertainment heroes more than we focus on historic heroes, that's a problem. You know, because
I went to the African American Museum, and I walked through it, and you know where everybody was? The sports area.
Yeah,
where they were showing the highlights with Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan and Wilt Chamberlain.
And it's an unattainable. You have a better chance of rolling up your sleeves and doing the hard work to emulate a Booker T. Washington's career than you do in Michael Jordan's career. But for some reason, we just can't get our heads around that.
Right. And now with what's going on in college with the NIL, now everybody can, more people can share in the wealth.
At least it's less emphasis on going pro.
Absolutely. But I would love for somebody to go to school.
Yes.
I just want somebody to go to class.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah, I'm here for an education. Sir?
Shador Sanders goes, I think I went to 2 classes. He went to 1. Oh, come on. Well, we'll see what happens. He might have to get a real job soon.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
like that
Tyrus.
kid, though, but yeah, thanks.